Have you ever looked into someone's eyes and felt like you were reading a riddle wrapped in a mystery, hidden behind a smile? Let me ask you something. Have you ever loved a woman so deeply and yet felt like you barely understood her? Like every move you made could either bring you closer or push her away, and you weren't even sure why. If you've ever been there, or if you're there right now, then you need to hear this. Because today, we're diving into a lesser-known battlefield, the unspoken weaknesses of women that most men never realize. Not because women are broken, not because they are to be conquered, but because understanding these hidden truths can make or break a relationship. And who better to guide us through this exploration than Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor and Stoic philosopher, who knew more about human nature than most modern love gurus combined. Before we dive in, do yourself a favor. Hit the like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and stick around till the very end, because this might just change how you look at love forever. All right, let's begin the story. Imagine Rome, 170 AD. The empire is on fire. Not literally, but with battles on every border and betrayal in every corner of the palace. Yet in the midst of chaos, Marcus Aurelius sits down at night in candlelight to write to himself, not to brag, not to preach, but to remind himself how to live. One of the core teachings he whispers to his own soul is this: if you seek tranquility, do less, or more accurately, do what's essential, and do it with clarity and purpose. This advice doesn't just apply to emperors, it applies to every man trying to build a relationship with a woman he cares about, especially when the territory is as complex and beautiful as the feminine heart. So what are the 10 hidden female weaknesses that most men ignore? Let's unpack them, slowly, respectfully, and with the wisdom of a Stoic. 1. Emotional safety over logic. Let me ask you something personal. Do you remember the first time you fell in love? Not just attraction, but that slow, soul-pulling kind of love. The kind that made your chest ache when she smiled. The kind where time stopped when her hand touched yours. Yeah, that kind. Maybe you were in college. Maybe it was a random conversation that turned into 3 a.m. texts and laughter that made you forget the world. Maybe she looked at you like you were the only man alive. And then one day, out of nowhere, you had a disagreement. Nothing explosive. Maybe you said something logical, simple, even harmless in your eyes. And suddenly she withdrew. Or she cried. Or she said, "You don't understand me." Sound familiar? Here's the truth most men learn too late. Women don't want logic in moments of emotional vulnerability. They want emotional safety. Let me take you into a real story. There was a guy named Hayden, solid guy, smart, calm, stoic by nature. He'd read a few quotes by Marcus Aurelius, thought he had it all figured out. Passionate. She felt things deeply. One evening, Lila came home upset after work. She said her co-worker ignored her idea in a meeting and gave credit to someone else. Aiden, being the fixer, said, "Well, maybe your idea wasn't clear enough. You should be more assertive next time." Logical, yes. Helpful, maybe. But did it make her feel safe? Not even close. She looked at him with those eyes, that mix of sadness and disappointment, and said, "Forget it." Then walked into the bedroom alone. And in that moment, Aiden learned something that would change how he loved forever. She didn't want a solution. She wanted connection. She wanted to feel heard. Marcus Aurelius said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." But in relationships, the true power lies in choosing emotional presence over problem solving. See, when a woman opens up, when she shares her struggle, it's not a request for advice. It's an invitation into her emotional world, and most men miss it. Here's what Aiden learned to say instead. "Damn, that must have felt awful. I can see how much that frustrated you. I would have felt the same." No fixing, no judging, just standing beside her emotionally. And you know what? Her body softened. She smiled through tears. She leaned into him instead of away. Now take a breath and think, have you ever been that guy who meant well but said the wrong thing? Have you ever watched her shut down and wondered why? If yes, you're not alone. We've all been Aiden at some point. But now you don't have to stay there. Because emotional safety isn't weakness, it's strength. It's the strongest thing you can give her in a world that constantly tells her to toughen up. And when she feels safe with you, she blooms. So before you explain, connect. Before you solve, listen. That moment can be the difference between her walking away or falling even deeper in love. Stick with me because the next point, it'll make you see love in a whole new way. 2. Craving reassurance, not just strength. Let me ask you something that maybe no one has ever asked you out loud. Have you ever loved someone and still felt like they were slipping through your fingers? Have you ever held a woman so tightly in your arms but deep down felt like she wasn't sure if she was still wanted? If your heart just whispered yes, then you're already living this story. Let's talk about something most men overlook: reassurance. Not just being strong, dependable, or loyal, but reminding her that you still choose her. Over and over again. Let me tell you about a guy named Zane. Zane was dependable. The kind of man who showed up, paid the bills, stayed faithful, protected his woman like a lion protects his pride. But his girlfriend, Ava, God, she was different. Fierce and soft at the same time. Independent but deeply emotional. And as time passed, she started asking little questions that confused Zane. But his girlfriend, Ava, God, she was different. Fierce and soft at the same time. Independent but deeply emotional. And as time passed, she started asking little questions that confused Zane. Do you still find me attractive? Would you still love me if I lost everything? Why don't you say sweet things like you used to? To him, these questions felt insecure. Of course I love you, he'd say. Haven't I shown you? But to her, it felt like he was drifting, like the man who once looked at her like the sun now saw her like wallpaper. You see, what Zane didn't realize, what most men don't, is that reassurance isn't about insecurity. It's about emotional oxygen. Marcus Aurelius said, "Don't waste time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." But even the most stoic emperor would understand. A good man doesn't just provide strength. He provides reminders of love. He doesn't assume his woman knows. He makes sure she feels it. Think about your own story. When was the last time you looked her in the eyes and told her, "You're still my favorite part of every day"? When was the last time you complimented her not just on how she looks, but on how she lives, how she listens, how she loves, how she shows up when she's tired, how she keeps giving when no one's noticing? That right there is what women crave. Not a man who's just strong, but one who sees her, values her, chooses her again and again, even when the world stops clapping. It doesn't make you weak to give reassurance. It makes you wise. Because when a woman stops asking if you love her, that doesn't mean she's secure. It often means she's given up. So remind her, not because she forgot, but because in a world full of noise, she wants to hear it from the one voice that matters most. Yours. Stay with me, because the next truth, it'll take you even deeper into the heart of what real love means. You're not just learning her, you're learning yourself in the process, through overthinking and silence. Let's pause for a second and ask something real. Have you ever been sitting next to her, on the couch, in the car, at dinner, and felt like she was miles away? She's quiet. She's not making eye contact. She smiles when you talk, but something's off. You can feel it, can't you? You ask, "What's wrong?" She says, "Nothing." But you know, something's not right. And here's where most men mess it up. We take her words at face value. We think, she said she's fine, so I guess she's fine. But deep down, there's a storm in her head, and it's spinning faster than you could ever imagine. Let me tell you a story. There's this guy, Leo, easygoing, logical, loved his girlfriend, Maya, with everything he had. She was warm, intelligent, nurturing, but also she thought a lot. Maybe too much. One night, after what felt like a perfect date, Maya went silent. She barely spoke during the drive home. Leo thought maybe she was tired, but inside her mind, she was spiraling. She was replaying something he said earlier, a joke he made about a waitress. A half-second pause before he said, "I love you." Tiny things. But in her heart, they weren't tiny at all. She wasn't angry. She wasn't distant. She was overthinking. And here's the truth. Many women don't overthink out loud. They go quiet. Not because they don't trust you, but because they're afraid of being too much. They don't want to seem needy, dramatic, or irrational. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." And when a woman's thoughts start turning dark, her soul follows. So what did Leo do? At first, he ignored it, gave her space. Thought she'd snap out of it. But the more he stayed silent, the more distant she became, until one night she broke down. Not because of something new, but because she had been carrying weeks of thoughts she couldn't say. And it broke him, because all along he thought things were fine. Here's the lesson. Silence doesn't always mean peace. Sometimes silence is screaming. So next time you sense that distance, don't ask what's wrong. Like a routine, ask it like you mean it. Hey, I feel like something's on your mind. And you don't have to say anything. If you're not ready, but I'm here, always. You know what that does? It tells her she's not too much. That her mind is not a burden. That her feelings matter. It's not about fixing. It's about feeling with her. Because when a woman overthinks in silence, she's not trying to leave you. She's trying to figure out if you'll come closer. Be the man who does. Don't walk away when her voice fades. Walk toward her. That's where the connection lives. And don't go anywhere because the next truth is one most men never see coming. But it's one you need to hear. 4. Intuition over explanation. Let me ask you something a little strange. Has she ever called you out for something you didn't even do, at least not in the way she said, and you got defensive? Maybe you said, "That's not what I meant," or "You're reading too much into it." But deep inside you knew something else. She was touching a truth you hadn't even admitted to yourself. Let's talk about something powerful, something most men misunderstand completely. Her intuition. Let me take you into a story. There was this guy, Damien. Quiet strength, cool under pressure, successful in business, loyal in love. He loved his woman, Aria, but he didn't always say what he felt. He didn't always express what was going on inside. One evening, they were sitting in their living room. No fight, no drama. Just a strange quiet. And then Aria turned to him and said, "You're here, but your heart's somewhere else. What's wrong?" He blinked, confused. He hadn't said anything. He didn't even know he was feeling off. But she felt it. And that's what most men don't get. A woman who loves you doesn't just listen to your words. She listens to your energy. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The soul is dyed the color of its thoughts." But a woman, she sees that color before you even speak it. Now here's the mistake men make. They try to explain instead of explore. They say, "You're overthinking," or "It's nothing." But she already knows it's something. And when you dismiss her intuition, she doesn't feel reassured, she feels like you're hiding. Because for her, intuition isn't just a vibe, it's a language. She might not be able to list facts and timelines, but she'll feel when something's off. She'll sense when your heart is distracted, when your thoughts are elsewhere, when your spirit is distant, even if your body is in the room. You might think you're protecting her by staying quiet, by keeping your stress or pain to yourself. But to her, your silence doesn't feel like strength. It feels like separation. So here's what Damien learned to say. "You know what? You're right. I didn't even realize it until you said something. But yeah, something's weighing on me." And you know what Aria did? She didn't scold. She didn't cry. She exhaled. Because she didn't need perfection. She just needed truth. Fellas, when she calls something out you can't explain, don't fight her. Don't dismiss her. Invite her in. Because when you honor her intuition, she feels seen, trusted, and emotionally safe. She doesn't want to be right. She wants to be real with you. So next time she senses something, don't explain it away. Explore it together. And with that shift, you stop being a man she loves, and you become a man she can lean on. Don't go anywhere. What I'm about to share next will show you how your silence, or your voice, can build or break her inner world. 5. The need to feel chosen, again and again. Let me ask you something close to the heart. Do you remember how hard you tried to win her in the beginning? The late night texts, the way you studied her favorite songs, how you waited for her replies like a kid waits for Christmas morning. You memorized her coffee order. You sent good morning messages before your eyes were fully open. And she felt it. That rush of being chosen. But then life happened. Work got busy. Comfort settled in. The texts got shorter. The compliments came less often. The little gestures faded like old photographs. And one day, she looked at you differently. Not because she stopped loving you, but because something inside her began whispering, "He doesn't see me the way he used to." Let me tell you about a man named Kieran. Strong, loyal, always present. He married the woman of his dreams, Celeste. Their love story was something out of a... He married the woman of his dreams, Celeste. Their love story was something out of a novel. Deep, poetic, full of fire. But a few years into the marriage, Celeste changed. She didn't laugh as much. Her eyes didn't sparkle the same. Kieran thought maybe she was stressed. But the truth was simpler and sadder. She didn't feel chosen anymore. And that's the 5th hidden truth you need to know. Women need to feel chosen, not just once, but over and over again. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "When you arise in the morning, think of what a precious privilege it is to be alive." I'd add this, and what a privilege it is to be loved by someone who still chooses you. You see, men often think of love as a decision we make once, but for a woman, love is a question that needs answering every single day. Do you still want me? Not just have me, not just tolerate me, not just come home to me. Do you still choose me the way you did in the beginning? Kieran learned the hard way. One night, Celeste said with tears in her eyes, "I know you love me, but I miss being your favorite person." And that shattered him, because he realized he had stopped pursuing her. So he changed. He left little notes on the mirror again. He kissed her forehead like it was the first time. He complimented her in front of others. He held her waist while she cooked. He whispered, "Out of everyone in the world, I'd still pick you." And slowly, Celeste came back to life. So I'll ask you, man to man, are you still choosing her? Do you still speak her love language? Notice her new haircut? Tell her she's breathtaking even when she's tired? If not, it's not too late. Because here's the secret. When a woman feels chosen, she becomes unstoppable. She loves harder, gives deeper, stands taller. But when she feels invisible, she starts to disappear quietly. Be the man who sees her every day, in every way. And don't go anywhere, because what's coming next will open your eyes to something that breaks many relationships without a single word. 6. Hyper-awareness of social cues. Let me ask you something that might surprise you. Has she ever reacted strongly to a moment you thought was nothing? Like the way you looked at your phone during dinner, or how you talked to the waitress, or that offhand joke you made in front of your friends, and you were confused. You said it wasn't a big deal, but to her it was. It really was. You see, here's what most men don't realize. Many women are hyper-aware of social cues, not because they're paranoid, not because they're insecure, but because they're trained by life to read the room and read, "You like their safety depends on it." Let me tell you about a man named Rehan, a calm guy, thoughtful, respectful, deeply in love with his girlfriend, Saira, but sometimes he made little slips. Nothing cruel, just careless. Once they were at a party. Rehan introduced Saira to his coworker and said, "This is Saira, she's, my girl." That pause was only half a second, but for Saira it echoed in her chest for the rest of the night. Because she noticed. She noticed the hesitation. She noticed how he introduced others with more clarity. She noticed how he didn't touch her back like he usually did. She noticed the way he laughed a little louder with another woman in the room. Rehan thought she was overthinking. But the truth? She was overfeeling. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Nowhere can man find a quieter or more untroubled retreat than in his own soul." But many women don't get that retreat. Not in the world. Not even in love. Because they're constantly scanning for signs. Why? Because the world has trained them to catch micro changes in tone, to sense tension behind silence, to hear what's not being said. And in relationships, that sensitivity becomes even sharper. Because to her, love isn't just words, it's presence. It's consistency. It's the small signals that say, "You're still safe here." When those signals go missing, even slightly, she notices. Here's what Rehan eventually realized. He didn't need to be perfect, but he needed to be present. He needed to be aware of how his actions made her feel, even the ones he thought were harmless. So now he looks her in the eyes when they talk. He holds her hand in public, not because he has to, but because he wants her to feel claimed. He speaks her name with confidence when he introduces her. He double-checks that his phone doesn't steal moments meant for her. And the difference? Saira stopped waiting for proof. She relaxed into his love. Fellas, this isn't about walking on eggshells. It's about realizing that your woman isn't just hearing your words, she's watching your soul speak through your actions. When you stay tuned in, when you notice the small things, when you send signals of safety, affection, and presence, she doesn't have to guess anymore. Stick around, because the next hidden truth will challenge something men pride themselves on, but might be slowly breaking their connection without them realizing it. 7. Dependency. She hates to admit. Let me ask you something personal. Have you ever seen her break down quietly? Not the loud kind, not the dramatic kind, but the kind where she just goes quiet, pulls away, and you sense this invisible weight sitting on her chest. She says, "I'm fine." But you know, she's not. What if I told you that in those moments, she's not just overwhelmed by the world, she's overwhelmed by you? Here's the seventh hidden truth most men miss. There's a kind of emotional dependency women carry, but they hate admitting it. Let me explain. There's a woman named Layla, strong, independent, raised herself from nothing, paid her bills, fixed her car, fought her battles. She never wanted to rely on anyone, especially not a man. But then she fell in love with Jay. At first it terrified her, the way her heart softened, the way her soul started sinking with his moods. His silences affected her. His bad days drained her. His smiles lit up her entire week. It wasn't about needing him to survive. It was about needing him to feel safe. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." But what happens when the injury isn't even done yet? What happens when a woman fears being hurt just because she loves you so much? Layla started noticing how much of her emotional world was tied to Jay. If he pulled away a little, she'd spiral. If he was cold, her whole day dimmed. And that scared her because it made her feel weak, dependent, out of control. So what did she do? She buried it. She wore strength like armor, smiled like nothing was wrong. But inside, she hated that someone had that kind of power over her emotions. Here's what Jay didn't see at first. Her strength wasn't just independence. Her strength was entrusting him with her softest self and hoping he wouldn't break it. And that's the part most men miss. When a woman loves you deeply, her heart builds its rhythm around yours. She doesn't want to admit she needs you, but she does. Not to fix everything, not to complete her, but to simply hold her world steady when hers begins to spin. So when you go cold even slightly, she feels it more deeply than she lets on. When you stop noticing her, appreciating her, being present, her soul shrinks silently. It's not that she's clingy, it's that she's vulnerable. And if she didn't care, she wouldn't feel any of it. So here's your invitation. Don't punish her for needing you. Don't mock her for her quiet dependency. Honor it, because when a strong woman chooses to depend on you, she's handing you the most fragile part of herself. And if you protect that part, she will love you like no one ever has. Stick around, because the next truth, it will expose the one thing that slowly kills emotional intimacy, even when love still exists. And you won't want to miss it. 8. The wound of comparison. Let me ask you something vulnerable. Have you ever complimented another woman and saw her face shift? You didn't mean anything by it. Maybe it was just a passing comment. She's got a great sense of style. She's really smart. Or maybe she saw you liking some photo and suddenly she went quiet. You asked, "What's wrong?" She said nothing. But in truth, she was bleeding silently from a wound you didn't even know you touched. Let me tell you a story about Ayan and Noor. Ayan was loyal, grounded, and completely in love with Noor. But he didn't realize how much. Noor was fighting a battle inside her own mind, a battle with comparison. One night, while scrolling on his phone beside her, Ayan casually said, "Wow, this girl from work is super sharp. She just got promoted again." He meant it as a compliment for someone else. But for Noor, it landed like a punch in the chest. Because in that moment, every voice of self-doubt in her head came roaring back. She's better than you. He admires her more. You're falling behind. Not because Noor was insecure, but because she loved Ayan deeply. And when a woman loves you, she doesn't compare herself to the world. She compares herself to the women you seem to admire, even if you're not aware of it. Even if you've never said anything directly, she sees who you pause on, who makes you smile, who makes you talk a little longer. Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "If you are distressed by anything external, the pain is not due to the thing itself, but to your estimate of it. But what if you, without knowing, are the one feeding her estimate?" That's the hidden truth here. A woman doesn't just want to feel loved. She wants to feel like there's no one else in your world who could compare to her, not because she's jealous, but because she wants to feel irreplaceable. Ayan eventually noticed the shift in Noor. She pulled back, got quieter, and finally she said, "Sometimes, I feel like you admire other women more than me, and I know it's not your fault, but it still hurts." That moment changed everything for Ayan. From then on, he got intentional. He complimented Noor deeply, not just for how she looked, but for how she thought. He noticed what made her different, not just what made her pretty. He spoke her name with pride in front of others. And most importantly, he made her feel like she was his standard, not someone chasing after one. And Noor? She healed. So here's what I'll tell you, man to man. If you love her, make sure she knows she's your favorite story, not a placeholder in between better ones. Because comparison doesn't always happen out loud. Sometimes it happens in glances, in silence. But your intentional love, that's what makes her believe there's no competition. Stick around because the next truth is the kind of hidden pain that can build over time and quietly break even the strongest. Love if you don't see it coming. 9. The pain of being misunderstood. Let me ask you something real. Has she ever tried to explain how she felt? And halfway through just gave up? She said, forget it. Or, you wouldn't get it anyway. And you felt confused, maybe frustrated. You were willing to listen, but somehow she still felt alone. That's not about logic. That's about something deeper. The pain of being misunderstood. Let me take you into a story. There was a girl named Zara, fierce, poetic, a soul full of fire. She grew up always being too much, too emotional, too sensitive, too dramatic. So she learned early to put a filter on her feelings. But when she fell in love with Ray, she thought finally, someone who will understand me. At first, Ray did. He listened. He made space for her, overthinking her stories, her fears. But over time, as life got busy and stress piled on, something shifted. Whenever she tried to express herself, Ray would respond with logic. You're overthinking. You're being too emotional. Just relax. He meant well. He wanted to help. He didn't want her to suffer. But to Zara, every just made her feel smaller. Because here's what most men miss. Women don't always want solutions. Sometimes they just want sanctuary. A place where their words don't need to be filtered. Where their feelings aren't judged. Where their messy, tangled emotions don't need to be fixed, just felt. Marcus Aurelius said, whenever you are about to find fault with someone, ask yourself the following question. What fault of mine most nearly resembles the one I am about to criticize? And that's the thing. Sometimes when we don't understand someone, it's not because they're broken. It's because we haven't slowed down enough to meet them where they are. Ray finally learned this one rainy night when Zara tried to explain how she felt. Disconnected, he jumped in to explain, to rationalize, to argue his point. But she stopped him and whispered, "You're not hearing me. You're just waiting to reply." That cut deeper than any argument. Because that's when he realized being misunderstood doesn't always come from silence. It can come from being unheard in a conversation too full of answers. So Ray changed. He started asking better questions. Can you help me understand what you're feeling right now? What do you need from me? Comfort, space, or just to listen? He stopped rushing to fix and started sitting with her pain. And that changed everything. Zara began to open again. She no longer cried in silence. She no longer wrote messages and deleted them before sending. She trusted that her voice mattered, not just when it made sense, but even when it didn't. So brother, here's the truth. Your woman doesn't want you to solve her. She wants you to see her, to understand her, not perfectly, but honestly. Because when a woman feels misunderstood, she builds walls. But when she feels heard, she builds home. And what's coming next? It's the final truth, the one that can make or break how a woman truly feels in love. Stick around. It's the one you'll carry for life. 10. Her need for emotional leadership. A surprising truth? Let me ask you a question. Have you ever noticed how in the toughest moments, she looks at you not just for answers, but for strength? Not the kind of strength that's about muscles or control, but the kind that anchors her when the storm rages inside her heart. Here's the last, but maybe the most important truth. She needs emotional leadership. Let me tell you a story about a man named Marcus, not the emperor, but someone who unknowingly carried a little of his spirit. Marcus was a great guy, successful, funny, kind. But when his girlfriend Elena faced anxiety or sadness, he often got confused. He thought his job was to fix things, to come up with solutions, to be the man by pushing forward and telling her to get over it. But Elena didn't need him to fix her feelings. She needed him to hold them. One night after a long day, Elena broke down. She felt overwhelmed by work, family, and her own expectations. Marcus tried his usual approach, offering advice, telling her to calm down. But she shook her head and said, "I don't want you to fix me. I want you to stand with me." That was a wake-up call. Marcus realized that emotional leadership isn't about controlling the emotions around you. It's about guiding them with calm, strength, and presence. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." That's emotional leadership. When she's scared, confused, or broken inside, she's looking to you not to silence her feelings, but to be the steady heart she can lean on. It's not about having all the answers. It's about showing up with patience. It's about listening without judgment. It's about being the calm in her storm. Marcus started doing this by simply being there, not rushing, not fixing, not dismissing, just holding space for Elena's pain, her fears, and her tears. And something beautiful happened. Elena felt safe enough to be vulnerable, to share her deepest worries without fear, to grow stronger knowing she wasn't alone. Men often think leadership means dominance or control, but emotional leadership? It means courage, the courage to be emotionally available. So here's what you need to remember. She's not asking you to be perfect. She's asking you to be present, to be the man who stands tall not just in success, but in the messy, complicated world of feelings. When you lead emotionally, you don't just win her heart, you earn her trust for a lifetime. So what does all this mean? Understanding these hidden weaknesses isn't about manipulation. It's about awareness, compassion, mastery of the art of connection. Marcus Aurelius believed in one thing above all: living with virtue. And what's more virtuous than loving someone not just for their strengths, but despite and even because of their weaknesses? If you've made it this far, you're not the average guy. You're the kind of man who seeks truth, who wants to love better, lead better, live deeper. And maybe that's what she's been waiting for all along. With that said, thanks for watching, and until next time.